Imagine two houses listed at the same price, in the same city, in the same neighborhood. On the surface, one even looks nicer than the other, but 5 years later, one of them appreciated steadily, was easy to finance, and when the owner decided to sell, received several offers within just a few weeks. The other struggled to get a fair bank loan, required expensive renovations in its first few years, and when it came time to sell, sat on the market for months until the owner had to accept a price well below what he expected. The difference between these two stories wasn't the location, and it wasn't the owner's financial situation. It was the architectural style of each house. Few people stop to think about this, but the shape, the internal layout, and even the era when that style was popular directly influence three things that determine whether a property is a good investment. The cost of upkeep over the years, how easy it is to get financing and insurance, and how quickly the house sells when it's time to let it go. Some house styles age well. They stay attractive to new generations of buyers, are easy to renovate, and keep strong acceptance from banks. Others, even if charming or unusual, gradually lose favor with the public, become more expensive to maintain, and end up stuck on the market when the owner needs to sell fast. That's why, throughout this video, I'm going to show you the 3 house styles that generate the most buyer's regret in the United States, along with the 4 styles I most recommend for anyone looking to buy with confidence in 2026. And at the end, you'll discover a detail that most people completely overlook before signing any contract, a detail capable of turning even the best house style into a terrible deal. The first style I recommend avoiding is the split-level house, that construction with divided levels, with a few steps separating the different living areas. During a showing, a lot of people find that division interesting because it seems to give a sense of privacy between spaces. But in practice, this layout creates confusing circulation inside the house itself, with too many stairs and rooms that don't connect naturally. This detail matters a lot when it comes to the buyer pool. Families with young children tend to avoid this type of house because going up and down stairs constantly inside the home isn't practical day to day. The same goes for older buyers who are looking for exactly the opposite, a single-level property free of obstacles, easy to move around in. When two large groups of buyers avoid a house style, demand drops, and that directly affects the resale price. On top of that, any renovation to modernize or reorganize the rooms in a split level tends to cost more, precisely because of that multi-level structure. The second style that deserves extra caution is the A-frame, that triangular-shaped house with the roof sloping almost down to the ground. Visually, it's a style that grabs attention. And it's no coincidence it shows up so often in photos of cabins and vacation homes. The problem is that this dominant roofline, which gives the house its personality, also eats into usable interior space. Sloped walls make it harder to install built-in closets, limit where furniture can go, and even complicate insulation work, which can drive up the energy bill. It's a style that wins people over visually, but it faces a much more limited resale market because the number of buyers willing to live with these day-to-day limitations is smaller than it seems. The third style I recommend being careful with is the mobile home or manufactured home, set up on a rented lot. This type of property usually has an appealing entry price, which attracts a lot of people trying to save money on the purchase. But there are 2 factors working against this kind of investment in the long run. The first is that, unlike a house built on its own foundation, this type of structure tends to lose value over time instead of appreciating. The second is dependence on the landowner. If the lot lease isn't renewed, or if the rules of the property change, the homeowner can run into serious trouble. This also significantly complicates financing and resale, because many banks assess this type of property more strictly, precisely because of that instability. A pattern repeats itself in almost every case of regret I see in the real estate market. The buyer walks into the house, falls for a visual detail, that charm that catches the eye on the first visit, and that emotion ends up carrying more weight than it should when it's time to decide. It's aesthetics speaking louder than practicality, and it happens to people of all ages, including people who have bought property before. The triangular roof of an A-frame looks like it came straight out of a mountain home catalog, the kind you see in a home decor magazine or a travel video. The room layout of a split level can seem modern and different, almost like a custom-designed architect's project. And the low price of a manufactured home solves an immediate budget problem, especially for someone trying to enter the market without stretching their finances too thin. Each of these styles has real appeal, and I'm not saying they're bad to live in. The problem shows up later, when the buyer realizes they didn't evaluate 3 fundamental points before signing the contract. The first is how much it will cost to keep that property in good shape over the years, factoring in the repairs, renovations, and adjustments that practically every house style requires at some point. The second is how much genuinely usable space that floor plan actually offers day to day, because square footage on paper is different from usable space in practice. And the third, maybe the most important of all, is how easy or difficult it will be to sell that house when the time comes, because every property, sooner or later, goes back on the market. It's important to be clear that the problem with these styles was never their appearance. None of them are ugly, and each one has a market of people who genuinely value it, sometimes even a market willing to pay more for the very thing most people avoid. The issue is something else. These are styles that are harder to keep in good condition, harder to finance on fair terms, since some banks assess this type of structure more cautiously, and harder to resell quickly when the market demands speed. In a home purchase, these 3 factors, maintenance, financing, and liquidity, weigh far more heavily on the final outcome than any aesthetic detail that caught your eye on the first showing. It's this kind of evaluation that separates an emotional purchase from a strategic one. And it's exactly the perspective I try to bring to anyone who comes to me before closing a deal. Now that you know which styles deserve that extra caution, it's time to see the other side of the coin. The house styles that I, as an attorney, most like to see when a client is thinking about protecting their own assets. The first style I recommend most is the ranch house, that single-story construction, spread out horizontally. It's not the flashiest style at first glance, and maybe that's why a lot of people walk right past it without giving it proper credit. But in practice, it's one of the smartest layouts out there for anyone thinking long-term. Maintenance is simple, since there are no interior stairs to worry about, and no complicated roof structures. That draws 2 large groups of buyers at once: families who want everyday practicality, and retirees looking for exactly that, a property free of obstacles, safe to move around in. When a style appeals to both of these groups at the same time, demand stays high year-round, and that translates into something very concrete at resale: liquidity. A well-located ranch house tends to sell fast, because there's always someone out there looking for exactly that kind of property. The second style is the modern colonial, an updated version of that classic American look we all recognize from a distance. What makes this style stand out is the efficiency of the floor plan. Bedrooms tend to be well distributed. Common areas make sense in the flow of the house, and there isn't the wasted space you see in more experimental layouts. This is a style the American market has already tested for decades and continues to embrace, which means less risk when buying, and it's not just about acceptance. Colonial houses also have a consistent track record of appreciation because they manage to balance tradition with functionality, something that appeals to both more conservative buyers and young families looking for their first larger home. The third style I recommend is the craftsman, known for its solid construction and the handcrafted details found in doors, windows, and finishes. This type of house tends to be in high demand, precisely because it brings together two things that rarely go hand in hand: real architectural charm and everyday functionality. The construction details of a craftsman, like exposed beams and wood finishes, are valued by the market, which helps both with getting a good bank appraisal and with selling the house later. It's a style that manages to appeal to buyers looking for something with personality, without giving up the practicality that any experienced buyer knows needs to be there. The fourth and final style on my list is the contemporary, or simple modern, clean lines, few ornaments, and a design built to function well in daily use. One of the biggest strengths of this style is energy efficiency. Well-placed windows, modern insulation, and updated materials tend to significantly cut the monthly energy bill. That, combined with the clean look this style delivers, has mainly attracted younger buyers who value both the day-to-day savings and a design that doesn't go out of style easily. It's a style that's likely to stay popular in the coming years, precisely because of that combination of current aesthetics and real savings for the homeowner's wallet. So far, I've shown you which styles tend to cause the most headaches and which ones tend to protect your assets better. But I need to be honest with you about one important point. Even the best style on this list can turn into a terrible deal if the house was modified the wrong way over the years. That's exactly what I check most carefully before any client signs a contract, regardless of the house's style. Because it doesn't matter if you pick a ranch, a colonial, or a craftsman that looks perfect on paper. If underneath it, that property is hiding alterations that never went through any approval process. The first red flag is additions built without permits from the city. Many homeowners expand a room, enclose a porch, or build an extra addition without going through the formal permitting process. At the time of sale, this can show up during inspection and turn into a serious problem, because banks and insurers usually require that the full square footage of the house be properly on record. The second red flag is a garage converted into a bedroom or an extra living area. This type of renovation is quite common, especially among families who need more space and decide to make use of what's already there. The problem is that when this conversion doesn't follow local building codes, it may not count as official livable space, which lowers the property's real value in a bank appraisal, even if the space looks great to live in. The third red flag is a basement converted into livable space without the necessary approval. This usually involves issues like ventilation, emergency exits, and minimum ceiling height requirements that, if not met, can prevent that space from officially counting as usable part of the house. And the fourth red flag, maybe the most common of all, is renovations done by the homeowner themselves, with no documentation, permit, or formal record of what was changed from the original structure. To really understand the impact of this, picture two houses of the same style, in the same neighborhood, sitting side by side. One of them kept its original structure, with every renovation properly documented and approved by the city. The other went through several unauthorized modifications over the years, done without any formal record. On the surface, the two houses might look almost identical, and an inattentive buyer might not notice any difference at all on a first visit. But in practice, these two houses follow completely different paths. The first gets financing without any trouble, because the bank finds everything within expected compliance. The second may face a loan denial, a rushed requirement to bring things up to code before closing, or even a coverage denial from the insurance company, precisely because of these irregular alterations. And at resale, this kind of problem tends to surface right during the inspection at the worst possible moment, when there's already an interested buyer and a tight deadline to get everything resolved. That's why, in 2026, I always tell people who come to me the same thing. The style of the house is what draws you in on that first visit, what sparks that initial interest and makes you picture your life in there. But it's the documentation behind every renovation, every addition, and every structural change that really decides whether that property is going to protect your wealth or turn into an expensive problem to deal with down the road. If this video helped you look at buying a house in a different way, give it a like and subscribe to the channel, because every week I bring you information like this, designed to protect your money and help you make safer decisions in the real estate market.